Hello and welcome to the Albion Obsessed podcast. You join us today on our season review. That's right, we are going to review the 2022-2023 season in its entirety. We're going to talk about the highs, we're going to talk about the lows. But before we get on to any of that, let's see who we've got on the show tonight. Let's welcome Joe. Joe, my friend, how are you? Your room is looking bare.
Yep. So if you hear the echoes, you know why. It's because everything in my house is currently in a box waiting to go to another house. And I feel like I've spoken about this house move so much, and I don't want to bore people, but I'm really excited. But yeah, I'm all good. Tom, how are you, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. My little one's got chicken pox, so I've been running around after him all day, which has been very, very fun, as I'm sure you can imagine. A teacher on half term, it's normally the teacher that gets sick, but no, this time it's been the child. So yeah, fun times in the Budgeon household. We also welcome back Chloe. Chloe, how are you? It's great to have you back on the pod.
Yeah, I'm not too bad, thanks. Absolutely buzzing that we've made Europe, and yeah, pretty good.
Amazing. It's great to have you both on today because, as I say, we're going to review the entire season because I tell you what, it's been a bit of a mad one. Let's start off then at the very, very beginning. I'm talking before a ball was even kicked. We had a bit of a turbulent summer, Joe. We saw Yves Bissouma sign for Tottenham Hotspur, our midfield general, if you like. We saw Neil Maupay, our top scorer for last season, depart to Everton. And then early in the summer, it became very apparent that Marc Cucurella, our player of the season, was going to be leaving too. A lot of online discussion from certain journalists about where he'd go. Eventually departed for Chelsea for a sum of 65-ish million pounds. So, Joe, before a ball was even kicked, there was a lot to talk about in the season. What did you make of those early moments?
First of all, so good for Cucurella to get his dream move to Chelsea after driving past there on the way back from the airport. I don't know how that Uber got lost, but he somehow found himself there. I always find that so comical. But a lot has been said about this club's bounce back ability, of losing certain people and replacing so very well. And as you say, £65 million for Cucurella, replacing him with Pervis Estupiñán, who I believe was 15 million euros, if I've got that correct. And the guy has been absolutely unreal. I would say probably even better than Marc Cucurella, and playing in a back four, whereas Marc Cucurella had a little bit more protection, I guess, behind him, playing in a back five, playing at wing back. And of course, yes, he did play at left centre back as well at times. But yeah, you would probably think that, well, a lot of opposition fans were thinking, well, what are Brighton doing? They're getting rid of Bissouma, obviously with 1 year left on his contract. So we were sort of forced into that move, really, to get something for him. And then, as you say, top goal scorer Neil Maupay, who was 1 goal away from beating Glenn Murray's record. So it was clear to see what these players gave to us, and it was really interesting to see where we would go from there, and who we would replace them with. And with Bissouma, it wasn't so much an issue for me because I saw how good Caicedo was, and a lot of people, there were still question marks around, can Caicedo live up to the Bissouma name? Can he fill that spot? And my God, he done that and some. And now we're talking about Marc Cucurella being Marc Cucurella. Shut up, Joe. Moises Caicedo being a 90-odd million pound player. So bounce back ability, the Brighton Hove Albion have got it. So I guess you could say you're slightly nervous when players of that stature leave because they can be hard to replace, absolutely, but not at Brighton Hove Albion, it seems.
No, it was a strange one. Chloe, I mean, cast your mind back to a year, well, just over a year ago. As we say, we lost 3 key players, and on the face of it, we only brought in one first-team ready replacement in Pervis Estupiñán. We did bring in other players. We brought in Enciso. We also brought in Simon Adingra, who we then loaned out almost automatically. On the face of it, Chloe, it seemed like we were going into the season very, very light. But do you think, obviously now the season has happened, it shows just how we almost pre-plan for things? We brought in Matoma in January, brought in Undav in January. Yes, they didn't start until this season, but it almost shows that the club are almost 2 steps ahead. So I know it's difficult to say a year on, but were you nervous at the time that we seem to be selling all our best players and not replacing them?
I do remember thinking that maybe we should get a replacement for Basuma, because even though Caicedo was good, I didn't know if he fit the exact same role. But he's been even better than Basuma was for us, to be honest. And obviously Cucurella we just replaced, which was good to see. I didn't mind that so much as we just brought in a replacement. And 15 million may not be much for some clubs, but for Brighton that's quite a lot of money really. So I wasn't too nervous about sort of the left back role. And then Mopé, it was just clear that he was out of favour. I think he was told he was third in the pecking order with Welbeck and Dav ahead of him. So it's if he's not going to play, he's going to be off, isn't he? I'm still a little bit disappointed because everyone knows how much I love Neil Mopé, but and I do think Zerbi would have gotten a tune out of him. I think he would have absolutely bulldozed Zerbi, but it wasn't bad for us. We've got the likes of Evan Ferguson now who's come through, and he's just probably the best striker I've seen at Brighton. Certainly potential wise. So it's all worked out well, and the club really seems to know sort of 2 steps ahead. And I don't think when they compare us to the likes of Leicester and Southampton that have sold players, I don't know if they've sort of had that same thing of knowing who they're going to replace them with before they even sell them, because we seem to have that. And it's worked wonders so far, and well, may it continue, although I do just hate losing players because, you get attached to them. Um,
Yeah, really well said, Chloe. And I think it's very important that we bear that in mind, considering the rumours that are currently circulating around Alexis McAllister and Moises Caicedo. Keep the faith, listeners and viewers. Keep the faith. Uncle Tony will see us through. So let's talk about some actual football then, Joe. Let's talk about the opening day of the season. We travelled to Manchester United, Old Trafford, and we won. We won convincingly. Do you think, Joe, that was a sign of what was to come?
It seems a million years ago, if I'm completely honest. This season has just felt like probably about 5 seasons all into one, because obviously the stoppage for the World Cup, we had obviously the Queen passed away and we stopped for that, the Graham Potter saga, everything like that. And yeah, it's crazy to think back to that United game, and obviously Pascal Gross making it his dance floor. Just absolutely owning the Man United back line, and you say it was convincing, and we looked unbelievably comfortable, and as you say, that definitely a sign of things to come in terms of our dominance in games, and obviously that increasing under Roberto Zerbi later on down the line. It was sort of that statement to say, and I know it was Ten Hag's first game, but it was that statement to say, look, it might be a different season, but Brighton and Hove Albion are still here. Last season wasn't a fluke. We beat you 4-0 because we deserved to beat you 4-0, not because of Manchester United going through a rough patch. You've got a new manager. You've got a new way of playing. We're going to beat you exactly the same way. And that was a common trend that we're obviously going to talk about throughout this episode. But it was a huge statement. And for Pascal to be the guy that set our season on the way that he said it, and end the season how he ended it was, fairy tale stuff. And yeah, when you think back to it, it's like, wow, what a start to this unbelievable journey that we've had.
Yeah, and Chloe, let's look at the team that started that game. In goal, we had Robert Sanchez. We had a back three of Joel Veltman, Lewis Duncan, Adam Webster, with Solly March and Leandro Trossard at wing back. Pascal Gross, McAllister, and Caicedo made up a midfield three. And in front of them, it was Adam Lallana and Danny Welbeck. I think if you go through that squad and you look at that compared to the last game of the season, only about 3 of those players started the last game of the season. I'd look back at that, Chloe, and it's like Joe said, it felt like a lifetime ago that we set up like the way we did and we played with those players. What is it kind of like? What does it feel like for me to rattle off those players, to say the likes of Leandro Trossard, and does it feel like another, like Joe said, does it feel like a lifetime ago to you as well?
Yeah, it really does. Just a completely different setup, and obviously it was a different manager, so he's going to set up differently. But yeah, it's just completely different. It's quite wild. Sort of the players that have come in, like Matoma, Ferguson, and Ciso, Buonanotte, since we've this that have come through this season and proved themselves, and it's wild how different it was. Although the lineup for Leeds was a bit different anyway. Was it Leeds? Not Leeds. That was last season's last game. Villa, that's the one. The lineup for Villa was a bit different anyway. And yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I suppose.
weird. It's like a whole other group of players, but you think we haven't really signed that many. They've just sort of come through. I suppose Potter didn't want to throw anyone in too quickly. And obviously the likes of Matoma have sort of started playing more under Zerbi and became really sort of solidified in the starting 11. And yeah, it's good to see because we've obviously got more loan players to come back this season. Well, in this break between the seasons. So yeah, hopefully they can break into the team and give us even more depth for next season and for fighting for Europe and that. So it's really good to see. I don't know how the club finds all these players, honestly. It's really impressive.
It's absolutely magical, and it's worth just noting in regards to that lineup as well. The substitutions that came on was Enoch Mwepu, who sadly had to retire. We'll speak about him in just a little while. Levi Colwill came on at the 91st minute. Undav came in at the 95th minute, and Lamptey on the 75th. So even like the subs, we don't see Lamptey because he's been injured. Mwepu had to retire. Colwill, who became a mainstay towards the end, and Undav only getting brief cameos at the end. As you say, Chloe, it feels like almost an entirely different team. So let's just rattle off a few things that happened in August then. Our first home game was against Newcastle United, and if it wasn't for Nick Pope, I think Brighton Hove Albion would have won that very comfortably. We also saw in that game Joe Matoma for the first time. He came on as a late substitute, and he gave Kieran Trippier, who many pundits have put in their team of the season, he gave Kieran Trippier an absolutely torrid time. Those first glimpses of Matoma, Joe, how excited were you?
That is unbelievable. It was unbelievably exciting, wasn't it? I think we were watching that game together, Tom, if memory serves me right, and just seeing a direct winger that's going to come off the bench and give that much injection of pace into the game. It's just absolutely unreal. And to know that he's probably arguably been one of the players of the season since coming into the team, especially under De Zerbi, and having him replace Leandro Trossard, who a lot of Brighton fans or a lot of fans elsewhere would have been like, where on earth do we get a Leandro Trossard replacement that quickly? Well, we've already got one, and actually, Leandro Trossard was out of the team because of Matoma. So yeah, it was just amazing to see that we've got this guy that has been hyped up by his fellow countrymen all over the internet. What a player you've got. Can't wait to see him in the Premier League. And my God, when we did see him in the Premier League, every Brighton fan was calling for him to start because it was clear to see how much he affected the game. And it's just so good to see that continue. The consistency came. His first goal came. And then he just hit the ground running after that. And I think it was something like ended with 15 goal involvements in the Premier League, which is no mean feat for your first season.
Yeah, I think you could tell from that first game when he came on against Newcastle as a sub, that he was going to be something very special. We saw our yearly win away at West Ham. We also beat Forest Green Rovers in the EFL Cup. And then, Chloe, for the briefest of moments in our home game against Leeds, we were top of the Premier League. I don't know if you remember it, but I remember it very well, sitting in the North Stand singing, "We're top of the league." Absolute scenes, Chloe.
Yeah, I do remember that. It was only like 10 minutes or something, but we were just all so elated to even be top for 10 minutes right at the start of the season, because that sort of thing has never really happened before for us. And it's been such an amazing season. I didn't even sort of think of that until you mentioned it just now, because so many good things have happened this season, and obviously that was one of them. It was, maybe next year it'll last. Sorry, that's just me being optimistic. It's not like I genuinely believe we're going to win the Premier League, but who knows?
You gotta hope. You've gotta hope. But no, it was one of those moments that I'll never forget. Chanting that
Yeah.
in the Premier League was wonderful. And it's also worth mentioning here as well that we never actually dropped outside of the top 10. I think the lowest we ever went was 9th, which is when we finished last season. So it shows you how much progress the club have made. The only game that we lost in August was against Fulham away. And I think that game, I remember being quite annoyed at that game then, but we're not going to talk about that now. Let's move on to September then, where we played Leicester City. We beat them 5-2, and that, Joe, would ultimately be the last game of one Graham Potter, because September was the month where Potter left us. Very shortly, actually, after that Leicester game, he left us and he took all the backroom staff to join Chelsea. Now, I remember at the time I was at work and I finished the day, looked at my phone, and I had about 120 messages, and I had no idea what was going on. And you guys were like, "Right, we're doing a live pod." We could sit here, we could bitch, we could moan about Graham Potter, but Joe, I'm going to flip it on its head. Was that the single most important moment of our season?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, hindsight is your best friend at times. And absolutely, Chelsea have done us a huge favour. They've taken a guy that maybe took us as far as he could take us. And we've replaced him with this guy who is now looking like he's going to be the next elite coach in football for the next 20 years. And I understand that, yes, he's only been in the Premier League for 8 months now, or 9 months now, but he's got that aura about him. And it's just the single best thing that could have happened to this football club, completely disguised in this dark, awful time that we seem to be experiencing. I remember for that week, I was unbelievably low, like so low. I remember after the Leicester game, I was on top of the world. Nothing could bring me down from that mood. And then the reports started coming out. And I'm thinking, why? Why now? Why just because Brighton Hove Albion are doing well, are we going to get picked apart? I'd already had those slight feelings when Basuma left, when Cucurella left. We're being picked apart. This has to stop. Where does this stop? But actually, it has been proved so many times. The grass is never, ever greener. It is for some, and for some, they've moved on at the right time. Ben White, etc. Leandro Trossard has moved on at the right time, in my opinion, as well. But yeah, for some, it's just hilarious to watch their downfall because they think they're so much better than us. They think they're so much bigger than us. And I get ambition in football. I 100% get it, but don't do it at those times. And the timing stunk. I remember saying at the time, it was awful timing. Unbelievably disrespectful to the club that stood by him. We didn't win at home in a single calendar year. People forget that. We had 6 games last season. We didn't score a goal. And we stood by him. And the first moment he had to jump, he jumped. But Graham, you've done us the world of good. Thank you ever so much for all the work you did beforehand. Thanks for giving us to Zerbi. because we're going on a European tour.
We certainly are. I mean, Chloe, I didn't know much about Zerbi at all. I knew that he had managed a little bit in Italy and at Sassuolo and at Shakhtar as well, but purely based on because he was a name that cropped up one time. And Graham Souness famously said on Talksport that he wasn't going to succeed because he didn't know our league. But he was hired, he was brought in, and same question to you, Chloe, as I just asked Joe. Was that the single most important moment in the season for us?
Yeah, it has to be. When Potter did leave, I was worried, but I did think that Bloom would probably, know who he was going to get and get the best person for the job, and De Zerbi. And you know what? I remember thinking I'm not going to get like attached to a manager because they're just mercenaries. I love De Zerbi. He's just done everything right. I love his passion and the way he celebrates our goals. And, when he gets sent off, that makes me love him even more. He's probably like my favourite Brighton manager because he just almost feels like one of us in a way, like the way he shows emotion. So, yeah, it was such a good thing to happen to us. And, yeah, I hope he stays with us forever. But I think he can go to the very top, so who knows?
Yeah, he really is, as Joe's already alluded to, a really elite level manager. And I was very similar to you, Chloe. I was very much sort of, don't fall in love with him. Don't fall in love with the man. And it took me until I think it was about the third goal against Liverpool in October, where he did his little stampy feet. And I was like, I love the man. I was sold there and then. But yeah, Joe, let's talk about that Liverpool game then in October. De Zerbi's first game. We were 3-0 up inside of 20 minutes. We were still playing a very 2-0 up in 20 minutes. Yes, we were. Thank you for reminding me. We were still playing a system and a formation that was still very much Potter-esque. But did you see early signs then, again, of what was to come under De Zerbi? His passion on the sidelines, his post-match comments, his desire to ever improve.
It's the difference between the two, and I don't want this podcast to be a comparison between Graham Potter and De Zerbi for the whole time, but the main difference between them is how much De Zerbi demands from his players, and how good he knows his players can be. Graham Potter was very set on settling for mediocrity all the time. Even at Chelsea, he was, oh, this is the Premier League. This is the toughest league in the world. It's hard to get results at these places, blah, blah, blah. De Zerbi, he's like, yeah, we're going to Liverpool away for my first game. Guess what? We're going to try and beat them, and we're going to try and be the best team on the pitch. What always impressed me about De Zerbi when he came in for the first time was how much he knew about our players and how much he'd studied them. And a lot of people were saying, oh, yeah, all he's done is looked at a squad list and he's picked a few to name check. Absolutely not. We saw the difference between Solly March under Graham Potter, Solly March under De Zerbi. That's how you know De Zerbi's looked at him and gone, yeah, this guy can be a Champions League player. This guy can be a European player. How much more can I get out of this squad? And it was very clear, even in those first 20 minutes, what he could get out of them, because the tenacity and the determination from the players was unlike anything we've ever seen. And my favourite comparison was it's Graham Potter football, but on 10 espressos. And that's what it is. And it was just like so exciting because obviously I was unbelievably nervous. New manager coming into a club that hasn't had unbelievable amounts of time to work with them. How well will they know his system? And he was right to do that sort of Graham Potter-esque system for the first time to get an understanding of what the players could do. But to go away to Liverpool and to play like that for the first 20 odd minutes. And I think that game was probably the biggest Premier League lesson De Zerbi could have got if he needed a Premier League lesson. To see like how vulnerable Leeds could be, even if you are playing your best football, because Liverpool can come out and they can spin the game on its head. And suddenly it's 3-2 and suddenly you're scrambling for an equalizer. But actually we almost nicked that game at the end as well, if I remember correctly. So that showed me that De Zerbi, even if you're, you go behind at Anfield, a lot of teams have their tail between their legs. They'll sort of damage limitation, we'll move on to the next one. Not under Roberto De Zerbi. You go and get that equaliser, and guess what? You try and get that winner as well. And yeah, it was just unbelievably fascinating to watch that unfold in front of us.
Yeah, it really, really was. And we'll talk a lot more about the mentality of Roberto De Zerbi and what he demands of his players a bit later, especially when we talk about the run-in. Now, Chloe, we went on a streak where we didn't win for 4 games, which got a lot of fans a bit sort of nervous, as Joe says, new manager coming in. Things had started to pick up under Graham Potter towards the latter stages of his time with us. And suddenly we went on a 4-game where we didn't win. But then we welcomed Chelsea Football Club to the Amex in late October. Now, many Brighton fans say that this is the best atmosphere they've ever experienced, Chloe. You were at the Amex, I believe. How does that rank up there for you in terms of atmosphere?
Yeah, it's got to be right up there with Sheffield Wednesday in the playoffs. I believe that was amazing as well. Definitely the best I've heard in years. Just everyone was up for it, and it always helps if there's a villain. And yeah, it was just incredible. And the noise obviously helped the team because that was an incredible display. And I wish the atmosphere was like that all the time. I don't think it is for any club, but it was just so nice to just be singing for 90 minutes, more or less. And yeah, it was such a fun day, not just the result, just sort of all that mood, and all that directed at Potter and Cucurella was just really funny, to be honest. And when he came past the North Stand, Cucurella looking all dejected, I just found that really funny. Like, grass ain't always greener, mate, is it?
Yep, I mean, well, it was what a fitting way, Joe, for Roberto De Zerbi to get his first win as well. I think that also factors into the fact, it's his first win in Premier League football, and it was against the former coach's new side. I mean, a bit of poetic justice.
I remember a picture of Roberto De Zerbi shaking Potter's hand, and De Zerbi is looking unbelievably smug, almost to say thank you for this football club. You like, I'm not going to sit here and say Graham Potter done an awful job, because he took us to where we were, and before he left, we were on top of the world, thinking how far can Graham Potter take us. But De Zerbi's come along and gone, yep, cheers for that, mate. I'll take this football club and I'll make it better. The best picture though from that game was Graham Potter looking unbelievably dejected, head down in his little turtleneck, glow up Graham with his little skin fade, with the whole of the West Stand celebrating. That picture for me is unbelievable, and that paints every single word you need to say about that moment. And the goosebumps every time a goal went in for us was just unreal. And the Pascal Gross celebration saying finished, it was just spine tingling. And you couldn't have written a better way to respond to the man that has been so arrogant towards you and left you the way that he left, and how he left and who he took. Yeah, easily one of the very best moments of the season. Well up there. I struggle to say that it's the pinnacle of this season because of what we went on to achieve. But oh my God, like, how lucky are we to be sat here saying, was that the best moment this season? No, I think this was, because it's just been an absolute dream for this football club. And like, I'm so excited for next season. I'm absolutely buzzing. And we were talking before the podcast, what are we going to do now? Football's over. Chloe, you go to, home and away, and you say it takes up a lot of your time. You don't know what to do with it. And I semi love this part of that excitement towards the end, towards the start of a new season. That buzz, seeing all the new players come in, having a look at the new kit and all that stuff. So yeah, what a time to be a Brighton fan. I know I went off on a massive tangent there, but My gosh, from where we were to it's just amazing.
It really is amazing, and as you say, we'll talk later towards the end, I suppose, of the podcast about defining moments. So here's just a heads up to you both. You can start thinking about those defining moments now. Chloe, November was a bit of a slow month for Brighton. Only 3 games, 2 in the league, 1 in the cup. I suppose the big thing there, Chloe, was Brighton going to Arsenal in the EFL Cup and beating them on their own patch. And it meant that they were one of the only teams, at that time to do that, because Arsenal were looking very tidy. They were fighting for, the top of the table in the Premier League, but we went there in the cup and we put them to the sword. I don't know if you went to the game or not, but still a really good result to get in the League Cup.
Yeah, I actually didn't go to that one because it was midweek and I didn't have any holidays, so I didn't get to that one, unfortunately. But yeah, to go to Arsenal, I mean, that's our playground really at this point, isn't it? We tend to get a result there, but to just demolish them the way we did was really something. And it was nice to go on a bit of a cup run as well. And that's one of the things I love about Zerbi. He wants to win everything. Like when he was talking about competing in 4 different competitions, because that's what he wants. He sees a chance to just win as much as possible. He wants to win every game. And I love that so much because I want to win every game. I mean, I know we can't, and I'm a Brighton fan, so I sort of accept that we're not always going to win everything, but I want to win everything.
Damn right. And we'll talk about it in just a moment, about his mentality post Charlton. But before we talk about Charlton, Joe, we have to talk about the World Cup, because this was a time when Brighton had quite a lot of players competing at the World Cup, which for a club like Brighton is massive in and of itself. But one of our players, Joe, alongside what many would consider, myself included, the greatest of all time, won the World Cup in Alexis McAllister. Just how special was it, Joe, to know that Brighton had a World Cup winner in their squad?
Yeah, I think we're unanimous in thinking Messi's the best of all time. Chloe, I saw you nodding your head, so that's
Yeah.
good. But yeah, unreal to know that he's won that World Cup and was, I believe, player of the match in the World Cup final, alongside these unbelievable players that I've been talking about for generations. Angel Di Maria, Lionel Messi, people like that. And what a moment for our football club to welcome back a World Cup winner and have that little celebration that we had for him. And I'm just so proud that we were able to give a player like Alexis McAllister that platform to show the world what he was about. And that's what Brighton give. And that's why I think we're in such a healthy position. And Chloe, you made you drew attention to the comparison earlier that people say we'll end up like Leicester, we'll end up like Southampton. But in my opinion, Southampton and Leicester didn't really give that same platform that we give to showcase these players and to give youth the chance. I mean, I'm happy to be corrected if there have been examples of that. But what a place for a player to come and progress themselves. State of the art training facilities, unbelievable place to live. And I think that's what drew Alexis in the first place. And we were very lucky to find him when we did, and to be a step ahead of other clubs wanting to scout him and bring him in. I'm sure there were other clubs looking at him, but same with Moises Caicedo and people like that. Like Marc Cucurella, we bought in for 15 million from Getafe and then sold him on. So our model is unbelievable. And that's the success of that model is allowing a player to go to the World Cup and winning that World Cup and then putting them on that pedestal even more. So yeah, an unbelievable achievement for Alexis and an unbelievable achievement for Brighton Hove Albion Football Club as well. A lot of people go, "Oh, you didn't win the World Cup," but I say it so many times. 26 years ago, almost didn't have a football club. 26 years later, have a World Cup winner. Do the maths. That's why we're so proud.
Yeah, 100%. And the welcome back that Alexis McAllister received was just so well done by the club. It was a really nice touch. to show him how much they appreciated him and his contribution. And as you rightfully say, Joe, it is a success for the club because they're the ones that scouted him, that put in the hard work, that have helped develop him into a World Cup winner. The argument could be if he had gone to another club, would the same thing have happened? That's an argument for a different day. We've got to talk about this season, and let's rattle on as football progressed then, Chloe. And I said that we were going to talk about it, the Charlton game where we exited the EFL Cup away to Charlton. We lost 4-3 on penalties. But there was a moment after the game, and in weeks after that game as well, that Zerbi kept bringing up. And this is for me where you could really see Zerbi coming into his own, the shift in mentality. That it wasn't some generic platitude, oh, it's a tough place to come, oh, it's, this, all games are tough, blah, blah, blah. It was a genuine anger that we hadn't been able to get the job done. And for weeks afterwards, he was still sore about losing to Charlton. So for me, this is a defining moment. The moment we lost to Charlton and Zerbi's reaction. What did you make of Zerbi's reaction and his comments after that? Did it please you to see him almost still weeks later moaning about losing to Charlton in the Cup?
I mean, on the one hand, you're thinking, try not to dwell on it too much, but then if you are using it to drive you forward to learn from it, then that's really the best thing. And it's just good to see he cares so much about losing. That was just not a good game for us. From what I hear from start to finish, it was a bit of a mess, straight from fans not being able to get tickets, they had to pick their tickets up and loads of queuing and so it was just a bit of a mess of a day, and then we unfortunately lost to them on penalties. But yeah, we really should have done it in 90 minutes. And they're one of the only teams to have beaten us this season, and they're League One. So no disrespect to Charlton, got a bit of a soft spot for them because I remember singing "We Hate Palace" more than you with them, but yeah, we really should be beating them on paper. So I can understand why he was frustrated, and I do love that he cares that much. He does just want to win every game so much, and because that's exactly how I feel. I want to win every game, and when we do lose to a sort of lower league team, you are thinking that's a little bit almost embarrassing sometimes. So it was good to see that he genuinely cared about this football club, to be honest. It was really good to see.
You're right. It was. And Joe, it sparked a reaction. And that reaction led us to scoring absolute hatfuls of goals from late December throughout January and into February as well. Brighton and Hove Albion just could not stop scoring. We put teams to the sword. In late December, we beat Southampton convincingly. We lost to Arsenal, but we did manage to score two, almost a third if it hadn't been chalked up off. Then we beat Everton by 4. We beat Middlesbrough 5-1. We beat Liverpool twice. We drew in a 2-2 game with Leicester City. Joe, we were accused of using manipulated stats at the time. But you've mentioned so often, Joe, especially in the last few weeks of this season, about reactions. Was that the first sign of a Zerbi reaction?
An extended Zerbi reaction, wasn't it? Good that we had, obviously, the players come back into the squad from the World Cup after that disappointing result against Charlton. And then, it's just unreal to know that Zerbi demands so much. And I'm never concerned for a big period under Zerbi, because the 5-1 loss against Everton hurt, and I guess we'll talk about that later. But I'm thinking, actually, what lessons has Zerbi learned from that? What has he drilled into his players not to do again? And every single day seems to be a massive school day for Zerbi, and to have that mentality and that sort of willingness to learn and willingness to take those disappointments and turn them into a positive is such a good trait to have as a manager. And I think that's what will eventually make De Zerbi elite. And I mean, yeah, you rattled off those games, and I'm sat there thinking, how did we go scoring that many goals? And people say, oh yeah, manipulated stats, but those manipulated stats won us the games. How much more, how much less manipulated can you get? Those goals won us the games, and the stats were speaking for themselves. And it was almost as if you were going into every game, every Brighton game, thinking, right, how many are we going to score today then? Because you just had that confidence that it was never going to end a ball draw 0-0. How many 0-0s did we have under De Zerbi? 2, 3?
I know Forest.
I can remember Forest. I can remember Charlton in 90 minutes, and I can remember Manchester United in 120 minutes at Wembley. So, there's always goals in a De Zerbi game. It's just whether they go for you or not. As we've said so many times, high risk, high reward football. And my God, in those months, did we get the high rewards?
Yeah, we certainly did. We scored absolute hatfuls, as I say. But Chloe, we can't talk about the turn of the year, January. We can't talk about that without seeing some, once again, players moving on. Leandro Trossard, who was at the time our top scorer, departed to Arsenal. We had the rumbling saga of Caicedo, who put in a transfer request in a very public manner. Enoch Mwepu was sadly admitted to hospital and ultimately retired from the game. So a lot of players were taken out of action, in a sense, there, with the club not really replacing them. We saw Buonanotte come in January, but I do believe at the time he wasn't necessarily meant for first team football, with Jeremy Sarmiento ahead of him, who ultimately got injured. But again, Chloe, we're seeing 3 key players in our squad for one reason or another have to leave our squad. Did it fill you with a sense of dread again that we were seeing key players leave without replacing them?
The thing is, I remember Trossard hadn't played in quite a few games before he left, and I think Mwepu hadn't either. Really, that was really sad for him to have to retire like that. But I wasn't too worried about our depth. I thought we probably had it all right, because Matoma had come in and sort of, he looked such a good player, and had already sort of replaced Trossard even before he left. So we've got that sort of rolling thing where we've already got the replacement sort of ready to come in once that player does leave. And yeah, I mean, sometimes I did think, against Forest when we lost to them, maybe it would have been nice to have Trossard just as an option, but I don't think we've really missed him that much, to be honest. And I think, the lack of depth has hurt us a bit at this tail end of the season, but we still did what we needed to do. And yeah, so it hasn't been too bad. I just hope we strengthen in the summer, because we want to fight on 4 fronts and we need a bit more depth. But in general, I think we're pretty good.
100%. And it's always as you mentioned, Joe, risk reward. And I think the club also do that with their strategies as well. It's the risk of having to spend a lot of money in January to bring someone in. Is that worth the reward, I suppose? And the club ultimately deemed that it wasn't worth it. I know a lot of fans at the time were saying, oh, Roberto De Zerbi is going to leave because he wasn't backed in the transfer window. Did you ever feel that way at the time, Joe? Did you ever feel like the club weren't backing Roberto De Zerbi?
It's always a worry, because you see it so many different clubs where the manager has things to say about the board, and that relationship is sort of there's a lot of friction made from those comments. But I think with De Zerbi's comments towards wanting some players, he was essentially just sort of not warning Bloom, but saying to him, look, if this football club wants to progress, this is what we need to do. And I think the shout for De Zerbi to be manager of the season has to be even louder, because of what he had to work with and because of how many injuries there were, because of the players we lost. everyone goes on about Eddie Howe this, Eddie Howe that, but look, he had £250 million spent for him. Congratulations, Eddie. Well done. Unai Emery come in into Villa and done a fantastic job, absolutely. But did Villa have the same injury problems that De Zerbi had? I don't think so. I'm not an expert on them, but I don't think they did. And yeah, De Zerbi was just sort of saying to Bloom, look, this is what we need. Let's try and get our target this season, which I believe they set the target at Champions League football. So again, tells you how much De Zerbi wants to succeed. Having that sort of safety net there to say, okay, if we don't quite get Champions League, at least we've done enough to get Europa League. If we don't get Europa League, at least we've done enough to get Europa Conference League. Always aiming high and having backup plans and safety nets behind him has done De Zerbi the world of good. And the way he's got his players ready for the battle towards the end of the season has been unlike any other that I've ever seen at this football club. And it's exciting times. And I hope Bloom has taken the comments from De Zerbi as, okay, let's really push to that next level.
And for what it's worth, I think he will. I don't know if you guys have seen it, but in the latest episode of Buzz's Boot Room Quiz, Buzz makes some comment about the budget, and Tony goes, no, all the budget's going towards new players. So, I'm sure Tony knows where money needs to be spent. Let's rattle off some other fixtures then for you. February started with a victory against Bournemouth, a last-minute winner for Karu Mutoma. Then we saw a bit of a robbery at Selhurst Park where Brighton were denied a clear goal because VAR, Chloe, drew the lines on the wrong player. And also, it's worth mentioning here as well that we had a bit of a balls up, no pun intended, from Big Bob Sanchez, which you could argue was the start of his falling out of favour.
Yeah, that game, that still feels like a robbery, because we had so much possession and we really probably deserved to win that. And when you've got a perfectly good goal being chalked off like that, it's just infuriating. And especially when it's against your arch rivals, it's like, how could this happen? How do you do that? How do you draw the line on the wrong player? I genuinely don't understand how you can do that. So it was just sort of seriously, we could have finally beaten Palace, because at this point we hadn't beaten them in bloody ages. And yeah, it was a bit disappointing because of how well we were playing at the time as well, and how poor they were. You thought maybe we could, absolutely annihilate them, especially because the chalked off goals, fairly early. We could have got a few more after that, but no, it was very disappointing. And I think that error from Sanchez, it was one of those you want to forget, because it was not good at all. I did hope that he would just sort of forget about it, because it happens. Players do make mistakes. Unfortunately, when it's a keeper that makes those mistakes, it generally leads to a goal being conceded. So yeah, it was just a very disappointing match. One I'd rather forget from this season. There's not too many of those, but yeah.
I think the next game is exactly the same as that. It was a 1-0 loss to Fulham, where once again we absolutely dominated, but Fulham with a last-minute winner. Very disappointing result. One of the most one-sided games I think I've ever seen, and we conceived to lose it. But Joe, we bounced back. We beat Stoke in the FA Cup 5th round, which then took us on to the quarterfinals, which we'd play against Grimsby Town late in March. In March, Joe, though, at the start of March, we played West Ham. So again, it's a nice, easy win for Brighton, because, we are a beach and we tend to beat West Ham quite a lot. But Joe, the big news about West Ham, not just the scoreline, was Jason Steele. Jason Steele came in, took the gloves, and he's not lost them since. Again, another turning point in the season for us.
Yeah, and we broke the Danny Ings hoodoo, so thank God for that. I hate seeing that man score against Brighton, but there it is. Yeah, Jason Steele, I mean, we've spoken so much about his journey on the last few podcasts. When we confirmed Europe, knowing where he was at Sunderland, and the headspace he was in, the amount of hate he was getting from Sunderland fans. Probably one of the, at the time, dubbed one of the worst goalkeepers in League One. And now he's just qualified for Europe, the Europa League with Brighton Hove Albion Football Club, and finished 6th in the Premier League. That just goes to show you that football is never linear. People should never tell you that. Me maybe, but people should never tell you that you can't achieve your dreams of succeeding in the Premier League. I think if you're in football, there's always that chance that you get there if you work hard enough. And that's what Jason Steele has done absolutely perfectly. Is he's been the number 2, he's been the number 3. Sometimes maybe you might have even considered him the number 4 and sent him out the door, but he's stayed professional. He's waited for his chance, and my God, he took his chance. And he's been a delight to watch on the field and after it as well. All of the such honest post-match interviews he gives. I love listening to him talk about the mentality of the Zerbi, and how he's got to where he is now, and it's a stunning story. One of the many stunning stories that come out of Brighton Hove Albion Football Club. Seemingly every single season, we've got some amazing story. So let that continue. Let Jason Steele continue to thrive, and let's see him hopefully start for us in the first Europa League game, because that would just complete the fairy tale.
Yeah, it really would. And just while we're on Europa League, seeing Lewis Dunk walk out captaining us in a Europa League game, I'm not ready for that. In March, we drew 2-2 with Leeds. We beat Crystal Palace at home, so there's that hoodoo put to bed that Chloe mentioned earlier. And as I say, we absolutely thumped Grimsby Town 5-0 in the FA Cup quarterfinals, meaning that we would be going to Wembley. So let's move on into April. April started with a 3-3 draw against Brentford and a 2-0 win against Bournemouth, Chloe, that saw Julio Enciso score his first goal for the club. Julio Enciso, it took him a while to break into the first team, but he's been a mainstay in the last couple of weeks and months.
Yeah, I think he's such a good player. He seems to get better every time he plays, which is just really good to see. He's obviously still really young, so I think he's got so much potential. And yeah, I remember that goal thinking, how has he got that much time on the ball? And then it's in the back of the net, and it was just such a good goal. And it was sort of near the end of the match where you're getting a bit sort of nervous that it's still only 1-0, and that just put the game to rest. And it was lovely to see him score, and just celebrating so much out of your seat. Well, I wasn't sitting down because it's an away game, but rushing right to the front of the stands, just it was brilliant. And just the goals he scores this season, and he just seems to, even when he doesn't score, he just sets the pitch alight. Is that a saying, or did I just make that up? So yeah, he's such a phenomenal player. His energy levels, just how fast he can run, and then some of his finishing, it's just, sky is the limit for him. And we're very lucky to have him at our football club, and I hope he scores lots more goals in the Europa League next season, and I'm sure he will.
I think my favourite comment that I've read on Twitter this season was, I think, jumping ahead a few games to Chelsea, where I saw someone comment, "What is an Enciso?" It was after he scored that absolute screamer against Chelsea, which won us the game. But we'll talk about that more in a minute. Joe, we can't talk about April without talking about one of the absolute travesties of the season. I don't really want to bring it up, but I've got to, because at the time, the rage was real. A 2-1 loss to Tottenham with some of the worst officiating you would ever see. Now, Joe, at the time, we were, in the heat of the moment. Brighton are on a European challenge. We were coming up against a team that were below par, below form. They had just parted ways with their manager, and Brighton were looking to upset the established top 6. It did seem at the time, Joe, that the officials were going to do everything possible to ruin our party. But Joe, a bit petty, I know, but how nice is it knowing that because we lost to Villa on the final day, Spurs don't get Europe?
Well, that's exactly what I was about to say, Tom. So in 5th place, we've got Liverpool. In 6th place, we've got Brighton Hove Albion. In 7th place, which is the final European place, we've got Aston Villa. And who finished 8th? Oh, Tottenham Hotspur. Poor old Tottenham Hotspur with poor old cheating Harry Kane. What a shame. Unlucky. It's the very, very least they deserve. And I find it one of the funniest things to happen this season. Probably almost on par with Graham Potter being sacked is how hilarious I find the fact that Tottenham didn't get European football. And in fact, Aston Villa, who picked up 11 points from 12 from their first 12 games, somehow had a resurgence in the latter end of the season and pipped them to that European spot. I was thinking that the battle was going to be between us, Brentford and Villa for Europa Conference League, and Spurs would comfortably get Europa League. But yeah, what's the phrase? Spursy. Unbelievably Spursy. So thank you, Tottenham Hotspur, for being god-awful. And I hope you don't get European football next season either. And your lovely little stadium can sit there and rot. But yeah, other than that, very petty.
I know it's petty, but all I can say is ha, excuse the expletive, fucking ha.
Now, a lot of Tottenham fans say, "Oh, why is your hatred towards Tottenham? Why are you so towards Tottenham?" And I think it would probably be because of how your players reacted when they won that game. Yves Bissouma to the camera, holding up 3 points. Well, how did those 3 points help you at the end of the season, Yves? Not very well, did they? Unlucky.
No, and because they cheated, and they had to cheat against little old Brighton to win. My anger is probably more directed at the officials than Spurs themselves, but as you say, Joe, they don't help themselves. They really, really don't. But let's move on to happier things, Chloe, because we did double over Chelsea with the aforementioned Julio and Ciso screamer, and we also went to our second FA Cup semi-final in 5 years. And although, of course, it was disappointing not to finish that game at Wembley as the victors, how fantastic was it to see that once again the club are taking the steps in the right direction? We've reached another FA Cup semi-final.
Yeah, that game was probably one of the sort of more devastating moments of the season. To be honest, looking at our results in April, that whole month was like a roller coaster. Some of the best games of the season, some of the worst. So yeah, it was really I was devastated after that game. But I was trying to think, it's okay, we can still get Europe through the league. This isn't the end of our season, not by a long shot. But I was just feeling a little bit robbed because, we had some phenomenal chances to win that game and we just didn't take them. I don't know if it was nerves or whatever, because it was sort of a big occasion for us. And it was one of the few 0-0 draws, as you've mentioned, Joe, that we've actually had under De Zerbi. So yeah, it was almost a bit weird. It's not like Brighton not to score any goals anymore. So yeah, that was really disappointing. And I feel like penalties is just such a horrible way to lose because it just doesn't really feel fair. But I feel like we could have played for like another year and no one would have scored. So only thing for it really. But yeah, and it was just not a nice feeling losing that game. But the day out was still fun. It was still nice to hang around with lots of different Brighton fans and have a nice day out, and hopefully next time we can win the thing, because never actually seen us win at Wembley, although I've only been twice. But
Yeah, we don't
third time lucky.
I don't even know if we've ever won at Wembley. I'm sure a fan older than myself might be able to point in the right direction. I know we've won in playoffs, but from my recollection, that was at the Millennium Stadium in Cardiff. But yeah, answers on a postcard, please. Joe, we played 7 games in April, and as Chloe said, we went on to extra time and penalties, so that's 120 minutes. The Nottingham Forest game, I think that went on for 100 as well into extra time, a game that we lost, and you could tell there that we were emotionally and physically and mentally fatigued in that game. But then we bounced back, Joe, with a sensational win at Wolverhampton against Wolverhampton at the Amex. And Joe, for this game, I want to bring a man into it, a man called Dennis Undav, a man who the many people had written off at the start of the season. He had scored against Forest Green Rovers at the very start of the season, but he didn't look convincing in his cameos from the bench. Again, not very convincing, but Wolverhampton seemed to be the game that really turned his season around, and he ended up scoring 5 goals in 8 appearances at the tail end of the season. What did you make of the Wolves game, Joe, first of all, and what did you make of Dennis Undav?
Yeah, I mean, I think the concerns beforehand were just, but I don't think how people were portraying the thoughts towards Dennis Undav were anywhere near fair. I get that you got concerns that can this guy cut it in the Premier League? But you have to give players that come from different leagues enough time to prove whether they are good enough or not. And it was also made known to us that he was going through a rough time personally as well. So that can't have helped, being so far away from your family when there's things that you need to sort out. I believe he was offered time off as well in relation to that. So all of these things you have to consider. And something that I said so many times, I believe last season, was that these players are human beings. They're not these performing robots that you're going to switch on at the start of the 90 minutes and they're going to score goals for you. That's not how it goes. And Dennis was unlucky on a few occasions. I believe it was against Bournemouth where he hit the post 3 times, hit the post twice and then the keeper saved it. So all those fine margin moments where you think, okay, could he have sort of gone on from there if that goal had gone in and had better fortunes? The better fortune came against Wolves because he was in the right place at the right time. He stayed professional again and has worked hard for his place. He started the game and he scores a brace. It's unbelievable for him. And we saw how emotional he was when he scored in the first 6 minutes against Grimsby, getting that first goal. I believe his first goal at the Amex on the back of the sad news that he received personally. So I just love him as a guy as well. Everything you've heard about Dennis Undav seems so chill. The boot room quiz thing, I thought he was absolutely hilarious. All of the players seem to rally around him like you wouldn't believe. So they believe that he can do it. Zerbi believes that he can do it. So you should believe that he can do it. And towards the end of this season, my God, he's proven to us that he can be a clinical finisher on his day. So I hope with a full pre-season under Roberto De Zerbi, he can be one of our main focal points of attack next season. We've seen Evan Ferguson work well with a strike partner, and we've seen Dennis Undav work well in that sort of number 10-ish role with Danny Welbeck. So maybe that's a partnership that can be formed, and they can score bags of goals for us next season. Again, it's just a reminder to people just to don't write people off. People wrote Jason Steele off, and now he's going on a European tour with Brighton. Dennis Undav is a quality footballer. It's going to take time, and it has taken time, and he's getting his rewards now. That goal against Villa was unreal. The way he tapped it away from Mings to get it away from him, get it onto his other foot and finish it like that. Just, you can see that he is a class finisher. And if he's going to get in those positions, he's going to get us goals.
Yeah, I mean, the goal against Wolves as well, the chip, the goal against Arsenal, the chip, sensational finisher, absolutely sensational. And as you say, Joe, really looking forward to seeing what he can do next season, because we are going to need that strength in depth. So let's talk about April, another month of 7 games, because the fixture list was so congested because of how deep we went into the FA Cup because of rearranged fixtures earlier in the year. It meant that Brighton had to play a lot of games back to back. And Chloe, you've already used the term roller coaster. You want to look at April's fixture list and the scores. My goodness, it was all over the shop. But it did start, Chloe, with a monumental win at home against Manchester United, which saw once again the club do a double over one of the established Big Six with a 99th minute winner from Alexis McAllister.
Do you mean May?
What did I say?
April.
Well, 7 games in May, 7 games in April as well. May started with the win against Manchester United at home at the Amex with a 99th winner from Alexis McAllister from the spot. Chloe, excuse the crude expression here, but Roberto De Zerbi has said that playing football his way takes blood, heart, and balls, big balls. McAllister had to show all 3 of those things at the 99th minute when he stood up to take that penalty.
Yeah, I mean, I was on a podcast with Manchester United fans before that game, and they said De Gea never saves penalties. So I was thinking he's going to save it, isn't he? Because apparently he never does. As long as it's on target, it goes in. So I was feeling very nervous just because of that. But McAllister's a really good penalty taker. That's half of what scares me about him leaving, is who's going to take our penalties, because he's so good at them. And I feel like it's been a while since we've had a sort of decent penalty taker. I'm not sure how many he scored this season, but I don't think he's actually missed one. So yeah, that's really good to have. It shows his sort of composure, and yeah, that game, it just almost feels poetic. It reminds me of that game when they had the penalty after the final whistle. That one stung so much, and to get a last minute penalty for a handball like they did, it was just like, it felt so poetic. And to win that game, yeah, it was just amazing, and the celebrations after were just immense. And those are the sort of games that Brighton win games against the top 6. That is what we've always done. And I think the rest of the results across the month sort of really demonstrate that. We do good against better sides. Yeah, that was a really good game, and yeah, we won.
Let's talk about the games then and results, because on the back of that, Joe, we lost 5-1 at home to Everton, a team fighting for survival. Now that was a freak result, which I'm going to skip over now because we've recently talked about that, and I don't want to relive that. And then we went to Arsenal, and we became the second team this season to beat them in the league with a 3-0 victory. And a lot of the talk, as it always is, whenever we beat one of the big teams, is all, weren't Arsenal poor? Weren't they poor? But Joe, how good were we at the Emirates?
The thing that makes that result even more impressive is the fact that after the Everton game, Roberto De Zerbi sat in front of the press and he said, "Next week you'll see the real Brighton." My God, we saw the real Brighton. It was sensational football. And we rode the Arsenal waves when we needed to. They're chasing a title. They're always going to come out fighting, especially at home. And to dispatch Arsenal at the end of that game the way we did, we saw the belief flow out of the Arsenal players, and that belief flow into our players. And every missed chance they have for us was just an extra bit of boost. And yeah, it was phenomenal. And I said at the time of the podcast after that one, the best possible response. You probably look at those fixtures and pick Everton that, oh yeah, that's going to be the game we get 3 points, and how many points are we going to get from this run of fixtures, and you pick out the ones you think, yeah, that they're going to be easy. No, that's not the Brighton Hove Albion way. Games against the bottom half are never, ever, ever easy. We never do it the easy way. Even against Southampton, we didn't do it the easy way. So yeah, it was fantastic to know that in these games where people dub it a free hit, we got the 3 points, and we beat them 3-0. You said, Tom, we were the second team to beat them at the Emirates in the Premier League. Only 3 teams beat them this season, and 2 of those teams were us. So, yeah, the Emirates, as you say, Chloe, is our playground. I love it when we go to the Emirates.
Yeah, I think there is a stat out there. I'm probably going to butcher it now. I think when you look at the last 5 teams to win at the Emirates against Arsenal, I think we are 3 of them. I think that's the stat. It's something remarkably similar. Basically, we like to play there, and we often win there. We followed up our very good victory against Arsenal with an away loss to Newcastle. We lost 4-1. I think the result, again, a bit of a freak result. It was 2-1 until the dying moments, and then Newcastle managed to get 2. That probably flatters them a bit more than the second half warranted. But Chloe, we managed to seal European football at home at the Amex the way it should be against Southampton with a 3-1 victory. How did you feel, Chloe, when that final whistle went, knowing that we would be competing in Europe? And at the time as well, we played a day after Villa and Spurs. Spurs lost to Brentford and Villa got a draw with Liverpool, which meant, although not mathematically, we'd almost certainly be playing in the Europa League because of our superior goal difference. Just how did that feel when that final whistle went?
Oh, it was just relief, one, that we'd actually done it, and just pure elation, really. I just remember, like, the next day at work, I still sort of just had a smile on my face the whole time. One of my colleagues commented on it, because I still am so happy that my little club has achieved European football, and what a way to do it. When they scored that second goal that was disallowed, I thought, oh my God, we've actually messed it up. We're not going to do it. But, the VAR gods answered my prayers, and it was ruled out. And then we went on to win 3-1, and it was quite a convincing victory in the end. But yeah, I've never been more nervous before, like, a game, like with that one. I don't think I've ever been that nervous. Even like looking at the results the previous day with Villa and Spurs, I was like just wanting the 90 minutes to be over, so we knew that we could achieve European football the next day. And when we did, it was just pure joy. It was amazing.
Yeah, pure joy, I think, is a great phrase to use, really, because it was just phenomenal. And as you say, it still feels strange even now to talk about the fact that Brighton Hove Albion will be competing in a European competition next season. And Joe, you could forgive the team if at that point there they went to the beach and they just chilled out. But no, we welcomed Manchester City a few days later, and I still maintain it's perhaps one of the best footballing 45 minutes I've ever seen at the Amex, because it was absolutely scintillating stuff. We saw what has to be one of the goals of the season in Julio Enciso's absolute screamer. But Joe, it's not over-exaggerating to say that at times we played Manchester City off the park.
It was a stunning game of football, an absolutely beautiful game of football from both teams. And, watching Man City do what they do so well, Erling Haaland, seeing him in the flesh also was spectacular. Thank God that he lived in Jean-Paul Van Hecke's pocket for 90 minutes, which was lovely. And the only way he could get a goal was to rip Levi Colwill's shirt off, much to the annoyance of Pep Guardiola, but that's, is what it is. It was, as I said, it was a stunning game of football. Before the game, when the lineups came out, people going, oh no, here we go, we're going to get absolutely smashed 7-0. And the goal difference is going to take a hit. We're going to go to Villa on the final day and get thumped by them. And it was looking bleak. And then Julio Enciso scores probably one of the best goals I've ever seen live. It has to be well up there. And we scored more as well. Obviously, the Karu Matoma handball, 100% a handball. The Danny Welbeck offside was minuscule, but you could say that probably by the letter of the law offside. Yeah. But we were scoring goals. Man City were at our mercy, and it was just I couldn't believe my eyes. And as the game went on, I was thinking, my gosh, we're going to get that point to secure Europa League football against Manchester City at the Amex. Obviously was one of our games in hand as well. So those games were so important, and we're going to talk about maybe my most sort of defining moment in the season a little bit later. But those games in hand were so unbelievably important that people were writing them off. People saying, "Oh, don't worry about them. We'll get them against Southampton. We'll get it against Everton. We'll get it." But we're getting these points from places you're just not expecting. And to get that point and to seal Europa League football under the lights as it's going to be next season, I think was probably the most fitting way to do it. Seeing that Europa League sign on the big screen, hearing that Europa League music for the first time was utterly spine-tingling. I don't think I've ever felt that way inside of a football ground before. I had goosebumps all over. As that Europa League theme was playing out, I was just like, I couldn't believe my ears. And at that time, I was picturing the orange sort of hoardings all around the Amex as it's going to be decorated for the Europa League for those fixtures. I believe the sponsors are hidden and it's all made Europa League themed. That's going to be some sight to behold. And to be welcoming teams from all over Europe at our stadium, which was built, 12 years ago, or opened 12 years ago. And we opened that against Doncaster in the league. And now we could possibly get Juventus or Sevilla or someone like that come play there competitively. Yeah, it's so special. And I haven't come down from cloud nine since the end of this season. I didn't care about the Villa game. I loved watching the final day in the Premier League, in the Bundesliga. I've loved watching the playoffs. It's just such a good time to be watching football right now. And there's the Europa League final tonight. I'll be watching that thinking, my gosh, we're going to be playing in that competition next season. It's just mind-boggling, Tom. And yeah, what a way to do it.
Yeah, truly spectacular, Joe. What a season. I mean, Chloe, the season did end on a bit of I called it, I can't remember the exact phrase I used, but we went to Villa Park. The season was fundamentally over for us there, and then Villa still needed to get a result to confirm their place in the Conference League. Were you overly disappointed with the result, Chloe, losing 2-1?
Not overly. There was a really petty bit of me that wanted to get payback for them stopping us from winning the title to the Championship, although ultimately I do feel that was our own failure. But yeah, to be honest, out of the teams that could still get Europe, I would much rather them than Spurs. Because apart from anything, they actually want to play in the Europa Conference. They don't care that it's only the conference. They want to play in Europe. Whereas Spurs, and it did feel a bit like Spurs didn't really deserve it because they nicked 3 points from us. They had 3 more points than they should have had. So yeah, it was a bit of a disappointing game, but at the end of the day, we'd already done what we needed to, so it was just a nice day out, singing Brighton songs, singing we're all going on a European tour. So yeah, wasn't too bad.
Good. Now, Chloe, I'm going to keep it on you for a second, if I may. As Joe's already said in this podcast, you travel quite a lot to watch Brighton play. What was your favourite away game this season?
Arsenal was certainly up there. That was just, such a dominant display from us, really. Trying to think. There's been lots of good ones. First game of the season at United, beating them at Old Trafford. I think it might have been one of the first times we'd beaten them there. And obviously winning at Stamford Bridge for the first time against Chelsea. Yeah, just some amazing games. They're all the big six clubs. Just some amazing memories made, really. And yeah, it's just been an incredible season.
Yeah, some truly magnificent results. Getting the double over United and Chelsea, definitely a highlight. Now, I did say earlier in the podcast, guys, we're going to end the podcast, if we may, by talking about defining moments. If you can pinpoint just one, that is. So, Joe, what do you think, or what would you put it down to, was a defining moment in our season for you?
Yeah, so I think the obvious choices are, of course, the moment Potter left, that first win against Chelsea for Roberto De Zerbi. But I'm going to go later on into the season and thinking about when the players were thinking, right, we've got a goal to achieve here. And my defining moment would be that 99th minute penalty from Alexis McAllister. I think, as Chloe described it, as poetic, and it was the way we lost to Manchester United at Wembley. You think, what is that going to do to the players' mentality? And of course, it came down to a penalty shootout, which is extremely late on into the afternoon. And the fact that it was a 99th minute penalty, and we were to close the game with essentially it was the last kick of the game, really. And the noise, Tom, inside that stadium was unlike anything I've ever heard. And we can compare it to the Chelsea atmosphere, but that was for the full 90 minutes. And if you haven't yet already done so, I think Dogma have got a full recording of the 90 minutes of the Chelsea game, which is spectacular to listen to. But that noise when that goal went in was just like, I couldn't describe it. It was just phenomenal. And to get that revenge on United and to set us on the way into a really compact May where it was going to define where we would be playing next season was just the best way to start that run. And yeah, I know we went on to lose 5-1 to Everton, but to know that these moments, these sort of games in hand, we could get points from them was so important because, Liverpool were looking behind their shoulders. Spurs were looking behind their shoulders. Brighton have still got 3 games to play more than us. They are breathing down our necks. And it was so important for us to keep that momentum going and to score in that fashion. It speaks for itself. So that for me is the defining moment of where we would end the season.
Very good, Jim. Very well put as well. Chloe, how about you? Is there a defining moment for you for this season?
I feel there's been lots of them, but the one I'm gonna go for is actually keeping Caicedo in January. I feel like if we had let him go, the tail end of the season would have been much different because he is such an important player for us. And I think even if we do lose him now, at least it's the end of the season and we can bring in a replacement, or maybe we've already got someone that we can bring in. But I think hanging on to him then was really important. And I also think that is sort of backing De Zerbi as well, not letting players go. So I do think, I think that was very important, and I'm very glad we did it. I was super glad at the time. It's like, yes, we can put our foot down and say, actually, we're not selling him in this window because they are contracted to us. And he got his head down and had some great performances in that second half of the season. So that's what I'm going for.
Really, really good shout, both of you. And yeah, keeping Caicedo. If that's not backing your coach, I don't know what is. For me, I can't remember what game it was after, but Roberto De Zerbi said Brighton are a big club, no? And he said our target had to be Europe. And for me, that was the defining moment, the switch in mentality. The switch from, the lads gave it everything. It is what it is. The Premier League is a tough. We've gone from that to, no, we've got a goal. So I think the defining moment was that shift in mentality. And there's probably not a single time where it started or ended or anything like that. But it was just so fantastic as a fan to hear your manager, your coach saying that. I remember thinking, what is he talking about? Surely the goal is top 10. And then he's like, no, we've got our goal, and our goal is Champions League, and you're thinking, but that's how you get your players on board. You get them to believe. You get them to believe. Not only is it something they can aim for, it's something where they deserve to be. You could say they deserve it. I know, terrible. But I think for me, that's the defining moment, that switch in mentality. And I can't necessarily pinpoint it to a particular game, but I just remember the post-match game when Roberto De Zerbi just turned around and said, Brighton are a big club now. We've got dreams of playing in Europe. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. As I say, such juxtaposed to what we heard from Graham Potter previously. So that would be my defining moment, just Roberto De Zerbi's mentality and what he instilled in those players. And ultimately, I put it down to that. And that's why we achieved what we achieved. So that's mine. Viewers, let us know yours down below in the comments section.
Tom, can I ask an additional question? If you were to sum this season up in one word, what would it be?
Big balls.
That's two words, but
damn it, ball.
Just balls.
It's so hard. If I had to pick one word, I'd probably say unbelievable, because I've said it before on the podcast. I wouldn't have believed it if you'd told me this even 5 years ago. I'm not just talking about back in the days of the with Dean, back in the early Amex days. I'm talking about just even when we first got into the Premier League. I would never have believed it. So my word would be unbelievable. How about you, Joe?
This one's going to go out to Dagan. And this is a hyphenated word. Fandarntastic.
That's such a
Dagan. There you go, Dagan. Chloe, what about you?
Phenomenal.
Some superb synonyms and superlatives here, gang. I absolutely love it. So viewers and listeners, don't forget to leave your defining moments and your one-word summary of this season. What a journey it has been, gang. What a journey it has been, listeners and viewers. Thank you very much for joining us as myself, Chloe, and Joe have dissected and reviewed. I can hear the Bluey theme tune. I'm so sorry.
And as always, we do things unbelievably professionally
do.
and smartly on the Albion Obsessed podcast. If you haven't watched Bluey, watch it. It's a great show. Anyway, Tom, close the show.
Yeah, seriously, while we're talking about Bluey, Sleepy Time is the single greatest television episode ever. And if you don't agree with me, don't at me. I don't care. Damn it. That's really ruined my flow. As you can tell, we do things so professionally on the Albion Obsessed podcast, but we like to keep things real. Viewers, listeners, thank you very much for joining Chloe, Joe, and myself as we have dissected and discussed this season. And thank you as ever for joining us throughout the season, through our podcast and through our other content. We will be releasing content throughout the off season, so keep checking back to the channels and keep an eye on our social media platforms, because we've got some really exciting stuff coming at you. But as always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more content if you haven't done so already. And wherever you may be, whenever you may be, go and watch some Bluey. You've earned it. See you next time. Take care.